Hello, my name is Kathy and I live in Great Yarmouth. A few weeks back I was chatting with Jackie from Jack's Dreaming, and we both concluded for different reasons that red bricks are most likely made of blood and bone. Jack's went ahead and made a video, and there's a link in the description, and I'm not going to go through all of her reasoning, but I will start by pointing out something that Jack's raised in her video, and that's the words that are very similar to death: mortar, mortician, grave, gravel, cement, cemetery. Now the system teaches us that there's organic material and inorganic material, and that's your baseline for separating everything on Earth. So inorganic obviously being stones and rocks, and organic being something that once lived, or came from something that once lived, is associated with life. So what would happen if you made a brick from blood? Now this is an article sent to me by Sandy123, so thank you once again, Sandy. And it's could animal blood be the next eco-friendly building material? And this was in 2012, and basically it's someone who actually used animal blood to make some bricks, and this was the British architect school graduate Jack Monroe. And he goes on in the article to say that placing the resulting mixture in formwork and baking it at 70 degrees Celsius for an hour causes the blood proteins to coagulate, and it produces a stable waterproof brick. So to this end he's looking to raise enough money to build a prototype home using blood bricks in Egypt. If he's successful, and this bit sort of made me chuckle, if he's successful, we might start seeing a lot of red brick homes being built in similar areas, as if bricks are made of anything other than red brick. So, if I can just show you something else that I come across, and it's to do with the word organic and the separation between organic and inorganic. And this article, the problem with the word organic, from science blogs, is basically having a moan about the way that the word organic is used. So organic, it says where it derives from. The original meaning was logically something related to an organ of the body. The meaning later generalized to characteristic of, pertaining to, or derived from living organisms. Nowadays, the most prevalent meaning of organic is in the supermarket, and it goes on, in relation to fruits and vegetables that are grown without fertilizers. Between the original definition and New Age natural definition, chemists also adopted organic, originally to describe the chemistry of carbon-based molecules derived from living things, but they quickly took those starting pieces and synthesized many more molecules that look nothing like anything found in anything living. But to chemists, these chemical reactions are still organic chemistry, and the products of these reactions are organic molecules, and that leads to the confounding situation that plastics, the epitome of artificial materials in the modern age, are organic molecules. Even though plastics are usually made out of petroleum, which came from once living organisms, I don't think most people think of plastic as remotely organic. Right, so I wanted to read that out to you because we don't think of plastic as something being organic, but that's because we've been made to think about plastic in a particular way. But it is organic. And being organic, although it's been processed in a particular way, and in its actual shape and form, obviously it does do damage, particularly in the sea and so on. But if and you're probably going to argue with me to begin with, but bear with me. If it was just buried underground, it would probably do no harm at all. So let me move on so that I can show you why I'm thinking that. So, just checking that it's still recording. It is. So, organise. The biological meaning, body part of a human or animal adapted to a certain function, is attested from late 14th century from medieval Latin sense of Latin organum. So, not obviously we can see where organism comes from. It's to do with our internal fleshy parts and that of other species. So, organic, it's linked with the word original as well, and Latin organum, which means instrument. So, organic compounds and inorganic compounds form the basis of chemistry, and that's what I was talking about, that they were moaning about, the fact that chemistry is using organic compounds and they're still referring to them as organic. Now, the primary difference in chemistry between organic versus inorganic compounds is that organic compounds always contain carbon, while most inorganic compounds do not contain carbon. And they're saying most inorganic compounds, but of course a diamond, which is considered to be inorganic, is made up all of carbon. But anyway, also nearly all organic compounds contain carbon, hydrogen or CH bonds. So in plain English, carbon, car being movement, travel, that's where you get car, carriage and so on. Bond being good. So carbon is a transitioning material. And we know that because carbon dating uses the fact that it's a good transitioning material to measure how old things are. How successful it is another story. But anyway, hydrogen is a fluid. It's a gene of water, so it's not water itself, but it's hydrogen. It's fluid. CH bonds means transitioning material still containing its fluid, hence organic. Inorganic does not have the CH bonds, therefore it's dried out completely and is no longer transitioning at a measurable rate. So that's the difference between the two, and as I said at the beginning, there are only those two if you just stop it at that baseline. But it's easy to see then how an organic material can become inorganic material simply by drying out to a point where it's no longer transitioning. So I'm putting forward the claim that nothing here on Earth, no gas, no rock, no grain of sand, nothing exists that has not experienced life or is a part of life and comes from a living being. And that raises questions. So if you can put aside just for a moment any sort of presupposed ideas of tectonic plates, bedrock, meteorites, and I'd just like to show you the logic, and if you feel I've gone wrong somewhere, please point it out. So the purpose of the body, organ means instrument. Instrument is from Latin instruere, arrange, prepare, set in order, inform, teach. It's literally instruct. Instrum ent, indicative of a string instrument, the word strum. Organ, organize, to put in order, to assemble in a particular way. Orgasmic, producing feelings of great pleasure or excitement, in case you didn't know what orgasmic meant. But we get a feel for how the word organ relates to the word instrument. and the building and arranging of apparatus. And they also relate to music and therefore sound and vibration. It seems to have stopped, doesn't want to move forward. Bear with me. So when does this instrument stop being an instrument? Well, when it's not fit for purpose, because broken down it's primarily wood. And what would it be if I set fire to it? Well, we'd be left with charcoal, ashes and smoke. So can I say it's a violin? So the point I'm making is, is a body, once it's turned into minerals and stone, a person? Well, no, it's not, because the director of the instrument has left. It's no longer fit for purpose. It would be incorrect, I think, to attach sentiments to the garden that we live in, because otherwise we're left with the impression that our garden is a graveyard. And my thoughts are that that will lead you down a very dark path. You know, it's not the way to be viewing things. So I'm not suggesting that there's something dark and sinister by the fact that things, you know, all of the minerals, all of the stones and so on, were once life. It doesn't make it a graveyard, and I don't think that that connotation was attached to it in the past, and I don't think it should be attached to it now. The most beautiful songs are born from the greatest of pain, and my advice would be that whenever you find yourself with a negative thought or feeling, and certainly there's a lot of that right now, experience it. Accept it exists, but don't dwell on it. Instead, turn it into something else, to something beautiful, and I think that's our purpose. Beauty is born of pain. So think of the current situation as an opportunity to really shine. You can turn all that negativity into something wonderful if you're just creative enough to be able to put out that right vibration. Anyway, back to the subject. If everyone lost their hair, then a hairbrush without its purpose is just plastic. And if a violin is broke beyond repair, then it's nothing more than a piece of dead tree. So how much of the earth is made up of dead tree, do you think? Considering how many trees there have potentially been throughout all of the years. And how much of it is dead leaves that fell year in, year out from the now dead tree and all the other trees. How much of the earth do you think is fermenting fruit? How much of the earth is made up of dead plants, dead grass? How much of the earth is made up of dead birds? Of course, some of the carcasses get eaten, but then it turns into something else and it's poo. This is a picture of some cows that had been residing in a house. Where do you think all that muck ends up if they're in a field? It's estimated that there are 38 million rabbits in the UK. 1 million of them are household pets. On average, a rabbit is said to live for around 9 years, so over an average human life, a total of 304 million rabbits in the UK alone would have lived and died. And as I said before, some of them are eaten. We're given a graph in school to explain where all the animals go. It's called a food chain. But not all of them are eaten, and it doesn't account for bones, feces, and urine. Did any of the rabbits or their drop-ins leave Earth? And then there are moles, badgers, foxes, rats, deer, squirrels, snakes, bats, hedgehogs, otters. There are around 250 kinds of wild animals in the UK that live in abundance, and around another 350 that are more rare. Fossil fuel, as far down as you drill, all you get are fossil fuels. So how far, if you think about it now, do you have to dig to find this bedrock of Earth or these tectonic plates? And what rock, when you get there, are those plates made of? Well, they're made of 3 kinds of rock, because there are only 3 kinds of rock. Igneous, from magma or lava, ignited, so igneous, ignited. An example is granite. It cools quickly to form small crystals. Some cool so quickly that they form amorphous glass, like obsidian, which is what I mentioned, and I mentioned in my last video why obsidian forms glass. Sedimentary, from particles that settle in water or settle from the air, i.e. sediment. Examples of flint, iron ore, limestones and rock salt. Metamorphic, rocks that change from one thing to another due to pressure and heat, i.e. they morph into a different thing. An example is marble, and also uranium, which morphs into lead. Fossils. So just to be clear, there are no other types of rock other than your metamorphic, igneous and sedimentary, and fossils are a separate category. So petrified trees and other organisms come under the category of fossils, but if you think of all the frogs that have died over all the years, if you can't account for every single fossil of every single frog, then they must surely be a part of the land. Now, the most common minerals in petrified fossils are quartz, calcite and iron. So that's in that frog and in other fossils. There are other minerals, but to be quite honest, I've gone through, I would say, pretty much all of them. And I'm just keeping it to the bare minimum. It took me months to verify this, months. But, you know, I'm just trying to give you the highlights of it, and I'm hoping it's not too boring for you. But anyway, quartz, calcite and iron. So quartz is also found in all forms of rock, igneous, metamorphic and sedimentary. Calcite, found in petrified fossils, is also found in igneous, metamorphic and sedimentary rock. It's common in hydrothermal environments, and this is one of the causes of calcification on hot taps in the home. And I've mentioned calcification before in relation to the geothermal power plants that I'm suggesting were the churches and other buildings, and when they've erupted, all of that heat and calcification has made things turn to stone. Anyway, iron is also found in igneous, metamorphic and sedimentary rock. Iron has many iron ore states, so different environments allow it to develop in a different way. So fossil contains all the identical stuff that's contained in all of the rock. Now you could argue that the biological matter has been transformed by the rock particles and that it was submerged in. But then you'd have to ask if the biological form was encased in an environment without air, because that's how we're told things fossilise, so it can't decompose, then where did all the biological material escape to? Isn't it more rational to accept that the biology turned into the quartz, calcite and iron? Quartz. Now this is under an electronic microscope, the surprising depth of crystal patterns in human bone, and that's in an article by Imperial College London, and in another article, Wired, it talks about DNA crystals form when a double helix is suspended in liquid that evaporates. They grow in patterns dictated by the information stored within the strands. The huge range of crystal structure is amazing. So we have crystals in us. Is that what quartz is? Calcite. Humans need calcium to build and maintain strong bones, and 90% of the body's calcium is in the bones and teeth. It's also necessary for maintaining healthy communication between the brain and other parts of the body, plays a role in muscle movement and cardiovascular function. So, could we consider that if we have calcium in us while we're alive, and we'll call it calcium then, but it becomes calcite when we're dead? Iron. It's said we don't have much iron in our bodies, but it's enough that when we cut ourselves, the iron mixes with air and turns red. And I was shocked when I first realised, probably a couple of years ago, that, which is sad, isn't it, that it was only a couple of years ago that I realised this, fortified with iron meant that metal or rust was a part of the ingredients in my cornflakes. But metal is organic. It's in every life form. Plastic is made from fossil fuels, as I mentioned before. It is organic. And we have been encouraged to blind ourselves from the truth. Amber. It's a resin from trees. We know what amber is. Mining amber. Amber is fossilized resin that has lain undisturbed, apparently for millions of years. Most of the world's amber is between 30 and 90 million years old, apparently. Today, most amber is mined from the earth, either through open cast mining on the surface of the earth or in tunnels. Now, I'm thinking that the tunnels are probably the tree roots. My thoughts are that mining sites are actually found by identifying where there was once a great tree. And then it's the roots that they dig into that give up the precious metals and gems. Amber has been used as a medicine since prehistoric times, we're told. So my question is, where is the rest of the tree if it isn't a part of the rock? Because they're mining the amber from rock, but that rock has to be tree, doesn't it? So, assuming none of the waste from any animal ever leaves the earth, and that their deceased body isn't going anywhere either, our only question should be, how does it all turn into rock? Of course, if you keep on piling up a compost heap, it will compress the matter and it will get hotter and hotter at the bottom until the pressure is too great and boom. And all of these images are from compost heaps in fields that have ignited. And we know that there is heat underground because that's the cause of geysers. And that will be why the heat is underground, because of all the fermentation. And we know, we can, the evidence is there from anyone who wants to go and build a compost heap or who has experience of one. You know it creates heat. There's no question marks there. You keep piling up dead bodies and fermented fruit and so on top of each other, you can guarantee there will be heat below that. And that heat isn't always erupting. It's not always, burning. It is literally just heat. And where you get pockets of heat, that's where you're getting these geysers. It is also where you get volcanoes. Because if you haven't got a water level running over the top for water to plume up, or if it ignites below ground, then it will just plume up like this. Now, I know that there are other truthers that have done absolutely fantastic work on volcanoes and mining waste, and I'm not trying to undermine anything that they've done. But the reason that truthers began looking into volcanoes, and what volcanoes really are, is because it made no sense that rocks were bubbling and boiling below us. And you see, I didn't come to that on my own. It was a different channel. It's someone else that I watched, and I saw other people talking about it. It can't, how can rocks be boiling? And rightly so. But I don't doubt that mining waste and slurry encourages ignition when dumped on top of a steaming concoction of putrefaction. But of course it can't be rocks that are burning below us and suddenly erupting, and I'll give you a few reasons why that's not possible. So first, as I showed you in the previous video, rock is smelted for the benefit of retrieving metals. So if volcanoes were molten rock, then they'd release first one substance and then another. The water from geysers is fresher than the cold water that it's leaving, if you see what I mean. It's like if you boiled a saucepan of salt water and you condense the steam, then you're going to have a fresher water than what you have in the pan, because the heat makes the water separate from some of the heavier minerals. Well, smelting makes rocks separate, and that's how the metals are extracted. But we don't have that effect with volcanoes. It would have to work that way, and we know it has to work that way because in the same way that compost heats exist, so does the smelting industry. It's a fact. If you get loads of rocks and you start smelting them, it starts to layer out, because you're separating everything, so it's going to layer out. And if it was melting rock or, lava rock that was underneath us, I'm hoping that you can see what I'm saying, that it would start to level out, and so you would get the lighter metal or rock or minerals would all come out, and it would be followed by the next lot and followed by the next lot in layers. It doesn't happen that way. And the answer is because volcanoes are not boiling rock. What's bubbling over is excrement, carcasses and rotting vegetation. And the other reason for raising a suspicion about volcanoes is that there'd be no reason for them to erupt if there was no pressure increase. If the rock was just happily bubbling away down there, why would it suddenly erupt? Of course, while your things keep on eating and defecating and dying, then you can see how the pressure keeps increasing. And volcanoes and geysers keep erupting. Igneous. If you went out and collected a pot full of dead things and subjected it all to immense heat, and then you poured it out, after it cooled, I guarantee that any geologist will tell you it's igneous rock. And the reason Roger from Mud Fossil University finds human DNA in rock is because he's absolutely correct. Some of it is indeed human, and quite possibly giants. What Roger hasn't acknowledged yet is the fact that all rock was once life. And you see why that can't be put forward as a fact. Can you see what fiction is going to break down instantly if you recognize that everything here, all the rocks And see, what they've done is they've actually turned it the other way round. And so in the Bible it says about man being made of clay, and it encourages you to think of the earth is made of the same stuff as us, and so maybe we were made of it. But it's not that way round. It is made of us. And it has to be that way around, because otherwise, you know, where is this coming from? And I do have ideas of how you can start with man and life and degrade it over time into land and earth and sea. But it doesn't work the other way around for me. And, of course, we're left in a situation that the planets that are apparently spinning round us, well, if there's no life, then there's no rock. So the whole of that fantasy breaks down immediately. Sedimentary. Sedimentary rock is no different to all the dust particles that gather on the surface. Mostly it's skin and fly waste, and maybe bits of tobacco if you smoke. Sand is sedimentary, mostly bits of broken shell, fish scales, teeth, crab shell, claws, etc. And yes, there is a lot of sand, but that's testimony to how long sea life has been here. The land tells you how long plants and animals have been here. Metamorphic. It stands to reason that if you put a body in the sea and you put a body on the ground and you leave a body exposed on top of a mountain, they'll morph into different ores of the same mineral because they're in different environments. And if I wasn't certain that there was heat underground, then I wouldn't be able to assert that it had been used to create electricity via geothermal wells. And if there isn't a furnace below us, then how do geothermal power plants work today? How do geysers work? And they do exist. Daphne Reloaded made a video, and I'll leave a link in the description. And this was sent over to me by both Sandy and Mick, Rebel Without a Pause, pretty much simultaneously. So it's a fantastic video, and she's comparing old world tech and new tech with a view to free energy, mainly in Ashgabat. And she's able to point out the mineralized water compared to the pools that you would be able to have as fresh water or swim in, like the ones that I showed in Iceland. And of course the mineralized water is what I suggested was coming out of the mouths of the gargoyles looking grotesque because that water is the bad water. And obviously that was in my first video. But yes, she does a fantastic job pointing it out. And of course she has no contact with me. She hasn't watched any of my videos that I'm aware of. And yet she's able to add to this and conclude that this is what's happening. And she relates it to the old tech. And what she points out is the ability to use metals that are planted in the ground that raise up to a higher level to harvest free energy as well. And I agree completely. It would work on the basis that the heat below ground would have one vibration, and the cold in the higher altitudes would create a different vibration. So between them, that metal, is vibrating at a sort of different resonances, causing a friction, which is energy. So you'll be aware that, as I keep pointing out, water turning a wheel is as free as the cost of the wheel and the generator. And heat from the ground to create steam to turn a turbine is equally free. The steam is free. Energy from metals installed at high altitude and grounded into the earth costs free as the cost of the metals. So earthquakes. It isn't movement of tectonic plates, as far as I'm concerned, that causes earthquakes. It's the ignition of fermented waste. Amber, as well as a variety of other crystals, give off electrical charge when they're subjected to friction. That's piezoelectricity. And you'll notice that most earthquakes are located where there's tidal movement. So it would stand to reason that you're going to build up that friction, and I think that's what's causing the earthquakes. So crystals under pressure plus movement can give off a charge, and my understanding of it is that the crystal is so compact that applying more energy forces energy out. So crystals resonate at different speeds as well. Obviously we see those different speeds as colour. But it was just an interesting point that I wanted to bring up, because back in the day, I'm told, people who used CB radios would change the colour crystal to pick up different radio frequencies, and I just thought that was quite amazing. But going back to the red bricks, as far as I can tell, for red bricks to give off an electrical charge, it would have to be constantly tapped, a bit like a tuning fork in a watch, or perhaps the right pitch of sound would achieve the aim, if indeed it was an aim. And the reason that I mention that is because a few people, when I was talking about electricity in the comments section, and by the way, thank you for all your lovely comments. It's, you know, I'm overwhelmed that, you know, people are so on board and interested in anything that I have to say. So it's really encouraging. Thank you. But yeah, and a few people have mentioned the idea of piezoelectricity being used in red bricks. Somebody mentioned a video about changing the polarity or something. I haven't seen any videos like that, and if any of you got links to that information, please send them to me, and I would be really interested to look into it. But iron is what makes red bricks red. Iron is a metal in the body, as I've said before, but it plays a central role in almost all living things, so it's not just about blood. Now, here's the thing. Iron is not found naturally on Earth. Like gold, we're told that it forms in meteorites that land on Earth. And I'll show you something about meteorites in a minute. So it's not there naturally, and if you think of all the iron since the supposed Iron Age that we've been dragging out of the ground, it's quite amazing that there's still such an abundance of it, really. Iron ores are found in abundance on the Earth, mostly in the form of hematite and magnetite. Now, hematite is black, and it forms these hexagonal crystals, and hemoglobin is a constituent of your blood, and it also has a hexagonal structure. So we have living crystals in us right now. Crystals, Christ. Magnetite. Magnetite is one of the oxides of iron, and it's ferromagnetic. It's attracted to a magnet, it can be magnetized to become a permanent magnet itself, and it's the most magnetic of all the naturally occurring minerals on Earth. In 1992, researchers identified the presence of magnetite, a permanently magnetic form of iron oxide, in human brain tissue. Iron in the body was no surprise, but the presence of magnetite in the brain could be more than incidental. Various studies have shown that brain cells respond to external magnetic fields. So there you go, we have magnetite. So red rust of iron, because obviously it's that's when, you know, it's when it mixes with air that it turns red. So could red brick be made of blood and bone? Well, absolutely. But more than that, the words gravel, mortar, cement tell us that it was once common knowledge. But if all rocks are produced from organic material, what about meteorites? Well, see, I don't think, I'm not denying that things fall out of the sky. They do, I know. And you often see strange, I mean, I've seen sort of shooting stars, I've seen the strangeness of things moving slowly across the sky, and I've even seen two lights that moved very slowly towards each other and then started blinking at each other and then shot off at immense speed in opposite directions. And I wasn't alone when I saw it either. I was with someone at the time, so we both saw it and we were both blown away by it. Couldn't work out what it was. So I'm not denying that there's stuff up there at all. There is. Now, this is NWA, Northwest Africa, 859 iron meteorite showing effects of atmospheric ablation in 2001. But I see it, I'm looking at these and look at the size of it because, you know, there is a ruler there. So it's what, about an inch? This one's being held with finger and thumb so you can see the size of it. Any possibility these are bullets? Do you think, rather than meteorites? Could be, couldn't it? So the first sighted fall and collection of a meteorite. So Ernst Florence Schlandy was the first to publish in 1794 the idea that meteorites might be rocks that originated not from Earth but from space. The scientific community of the time responded with resistance and mockery. Now that tells me that before 1794 they had a different idea of what it was falling out of the sky, to have dismissed it so easily and laughed at him. Anyway, the first sighted fall and collection of a meteorite was the Pribram meteorite, which fell in Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, in April 1959. And the meteorite was found to have penetrated ploughed land to a depth of 20 centimetres, so that's 7.9 inches, and it bounced and had fallen 30 centimetres or 12 inches further on. Now sadly nobody thought to take photos of the landing site. Now that makes me question it immediately. So something was sighted falling out of the sky. I don't doubt that. Then that was the first time that they apparently in 1959 worked out where it had landed, and they ran to get it, but they, you know, having got that far, they didn't then take any pictures, or if they did take pictures, they're not online that I can find. You know, maybe it's just me, maybe I couldn't find them, but they're not online that I can find any pictures of them actually being buried in the ground. Now, of course, meteorites are said to fall at a tremendous speed, and so in theory it would penetrate deep into the ground. But it would have been nice to see the pictures. And the rocks, of course, all end up in the museum, because any meteorite that falls has to be ferried away very quickly. Do you recall that we used to be told, don't touch them because they might be radioactive and dangerous? See, they really want to keep us away from this stuff, and that should raise a lot of questions. The Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory was one of the first automated observatories set up to look for meteors. so that when they do fall out of the sky, they can run and get them before anyone else does. That should make you question what's actually going on. So, falling stars and comets that only become meteorites if they actually impact the Earth. So, obviously, not everything actually hits the Earth. All these lights sort of falling out of the sky. So, let's go and have a look at some of them. So, what have we got? Right, so I'm obviously not going to go through tons, but the ones that sort of are prominent in my mind. In 2013 in Russia, I'm sure you will all recall that a meteor that had loads of footage online. I had that awful sonic boom, and I think some people got hurt with glass shattering and things like that. So that's quite a prominent one. And something landed then. So shall we go and have a look at where it landed? Let's see if we actually see them filming it. So here we've got...
The site has actually become something of a tourist spot for locals, wanting to see it for themselves. And I want to show you guys something. This is the reason that so many people got injured. The broken glass. Many people went to the window to check out that big flash in the sky. And when they got there, the blast came and blew the windows out.
Because what I would show you was
in the ice. But in the end,
the
bigger chunks is thought to have left a big hole in the ice. But in the end, they came up empty-handed. The site has actually become something of a tourist spot for locals, wanting to see it for themselves. And I want to show you guys something. This is the reason that so many people got in.
So if I just come out of that bit. And so I noticed on this particular one as well, and it's back here, was this.
Are still shocked. The destruction is
there. So they're flicking through all the damage. It kind of, you see all of the windows smash, but it done this? Really? Just with the sonic boom? That's an incredible amount of damage. And it does make me wonder whether what come out of the sky actually landed here, rather than anywhere else. But obviously we can't be sure, and they certainly don't suggest it, they just show a quick clip of it. So, and obviously there's loads of these. If you look, Russia hit by a meteor 2013, there's loads and loads and loads of different footage of it. So, seeing as we saw the iced over lake, now bearing in mind this was February the 16th of 2013, and if we have a look, I think it's this one. This is now October 17th. So it's February that it happened, and then we're back at the same lake that isn't frozen anymore. And obviously they've got the reporters there, and that's when they go down and take the meteorite out.
Visibility conditions to retrieve it from the bottom of a lake.
So
it's believed to be the largest piece of space
rock and look, they're sort of picking up bits and breaking it. Are you convinced by that? Now, what makes me unconvinced is, having seen the meteor come down, and there's plenty of footage of it, you can see the immense heat attached to that. And yet we saw the ice, and it was in that lake, because they find it in that lake when all of the ice is defrosted. Do you not think there'd have been a lot of steam there? In that first lot of footage? If that's where it landed, do you not think that the heat would have caused some steam, at least? And yet there was nothing, so I'm just not convinced. And this one,
1 million square feet of glass shattered, and over
Oh, no, I don't
1,200
think it
people
is this
injured.
one. It's great.
According to NASA, this...
Bear with me. Yeah. So, someone on March 2nd, so this is only a month later, is claiming that this is the impact crater of the meteor. And I don't know where this footage come from, whether this is true. It doesn't really go into much detail about it. It just claims that that's where it hit. And this isn't official footage, if you like. So I'm not sure. So that's that one. I think the last one I wanted to show you. Oh no, there was another one, because this was quite interesting, on the same topic, same meteor. So someone had taken footage, but claims that it looks like it was being shot down. So if I just play you this, you can see what it means. Whether the footage has been doctored or not, I don't know. It's quite interesting. Do you see that? See how it looks like it's been shot down? Now if that were something space junk that's up there, something that humanity had put up there and they didn't want you to know what it was, it would make perfect sense, wouldn't it, that they'd want to cover it up, make sure they got there first, hide it away, let you think it's rock. See, what is that? It could just be a strange angle that he's filmed it at, some kind of optical illusion, but they didn't want you to know. Shooting it into pieces would be useful. And the last thing that I was going to show you was this. This little girl going round finding meteors so she can sell them, and her and her family can have some money. Bless her. And I hope she finds thousands of them and makes an absolute fortune out of all the suckers who think it is rock. So good on her. And then we have Elizabeth Hodges, the only person ever hit by a falling meteorite. So let's examine this story and see whether we think it rings true. So 1st of November, November the 3rd, sorry, not 1st of November, it was November the 30th, 1954. Elizabeth was asleep when she woke to a loud bang. So her radio was smashed up and there was a hole in the ceiling. There were never any photos of the radio. Again, I find that odd. There's lots of mock-ups of what the radio probably looked like, but none of the actual radio. But anyway, also her side hurt. She concluded that what must have happened, because there was a big rock, she says, on the floor. So she concluded that what must have happened is that a meteorite fell through the roof, hit the radio, and ricocheted into her side, and the authorities went along with the story. So this is the hole in the ceiling, no smoke, no burns. That look realistic to you? And I have no idea why the authorities chose to go along with the farce, but here's the rest of the story. And I'm sure there's a lot more to these stories, but it goes like this. The Hodges kept the rock, but never sold it. They tried, but nobody was interested. I find that odd. The couple split up. Elizabeth went into care and died prematurely at the age of 52. And in her will, she donated the rock to the museum. Very strange. I'm sure there's a lot more to that than meets the eye. And here are the pictures claiming to be the original rock. And that was photographed at the time, and that's more recent. Same rock? Possibly. I don't know. I'm not buying it that it fell through the roof of the house, hit her radio, and then she clearly did have a bad bruise, but it then hit her with no burns. Now there's also the strange balls that fall from the sky. Now that's a little bit more realistic, I think. And we know that some of them, and I'm sure lots of you have looked into this because it's one of those conspiracies that's been around for ages. Some of the writing was actually Ukrainian, so it was Russian. But in case you don't know what those balls were, let me just quickly show you, because I'm going to bring this subject up again in a bit. They are hydrazine propellant tanks, and they propel satellites and spacecraft. Now, satellites and spacecraft might not be what they're putting up there. That doesn't mean they aren't putting anything up there, and it doesn't mean they don't want to hide what bits and pieces might fall back down. So this is what they are. And you can see that that's what they are. And they're all full of helium or nitrogen. See, there we go. Helium or nitrogen. And they're all titanium as well. And obviously titanium is a particularly tough and lightweight metal. And some of them are shaped slightly differently. But that's pretty much what I think is falling out the sky, and a few other bits and pieces. And I'll come back to that in a bit. And last of all, more recently, just because I thought it was amusing, this fragment was found on a driveway in Gloucestershire. It was from March this year, or last month, in England. You can tell, can't you? This thing sort of makes it clear. That will always denote now when you look at historic photos, particularly street scenes and things like that, roughly what era you were in. But anyway, the occupants noticed a black sooty splodge, it said, on their driveway, and they notified the authorities, of course, who handed the piece to the Natural History Museum. I don't know if you're aware, but you're not allowed to keep them. And they're not full of radiation anymore. That story seems to have fallen by the wayside. But seriously, so in the article, the speed the meteorite was travelling when it struck is estimated by scientists to be around 13 kilometres per second. That's around 29,000 miles per hour. And for reference, the fastest bullet velocity is 1,800 miles per hour. And there it is sitting on the grass there. That's nuts. And it may well be that it was a misprint or something in that particular article. I don't know. I wasn't prepared to look into it any further. And incidentally, none of those meteors, apart from the first ones that I said looked like bullets, turned out to be iron. The only place that iron is created and recreated is through blood and through other living beings that have iron as a constituent of their natural being. So what does fall from the sky? I can tell you what it isn't. It isn't satellites for internet, because that's provided by underground cables. It cannot use the satellites because it would take too long, we're told. I mean, that's from the horse's mouth. We can't use satellites because it would take too long for internet. So it's all done by cables. And for the same reason, TV cannot be provided that way. And I don't believe for 1 minute that navigation systems use anything other than triangulation from stationary towers. It's not going all the way up to space. So the aerial photos that are taken and stitched together for Google Earth are provided by and large by planes and helium balloons. And satellites don't have cameras. They provide data that's encoded, which sends down telemetry data, if indeed they exist at all. Satellites are about the size of a bus mostly. They don't have lights. It's highly unlikely, therefore, that the lights moving across the sky that we've all witnessed, I'm sure we've all seen that, are satellites. And yet all over the world we have these observatories. And there are thousands of them. And we're just kept too occupied with occupations and busy with business to even question such things. Because what are they looking at? What are they doing? Of course, we've got Lucifer, the binocular telescope belonging to the Vatican. And with all these observatories and telescopes all over the world, don't you find it odd that they have never produced a single photo to show us what they are looking at? Not one. And that means we should all be looking into what the hell are they doing. And it's, you know, they've been there all this time, so what are they doing? What are they looking at? And I'll tell you something, the thing that made me start looking into this is because I wanted to go to the London Greenwich Observatory. And this is going back a few years when you were allowed to do such things. But when I tried to book it, it turns out, because it's open to the public, you know, it doesn't say that there are any limitations, just it's open to the public. And you have to buy tickets, so you're going to pay to go. But it turned out you have to book an appointment. There's a huge backlist. And there would be a huge backlist because it only opens 2 months a year. And I thought, well, that's very limiting. Well, it was more limiting than that, because you're not allowed to go to the observatory on days that the moon is showing. So then you're limited to just a day or so, or day or two of each of those 2 months. So out of a whole year, you're limited to, what, 2-3 days that you can actually book it for. And then if it's cloudy, oh well, that's unfortunate. But they will show you pictures of what they'll show you then, the pictures, if you pay. But they're not uploading the pictures. You can't go and buy catalogues of all the pictures that they've taken. There are no pictures. So the most likely scenario, as far as I'm concerned, is that it's communication with other timelines and dimensions. And I use those sort of 2 words interactively. I think I mean timelines more, but of course it's dimensional as well because they're real worlds. So timelines, dimensions. The satellites, or what they call the satellites, are more likely to be split beam mirrors. And that's why we see them, due to the light reflection. And split beams are used in LIGO. And a LIGO is a machine, supposedly, this machine here. And that's supposedly to detect gravitational waves. But I'd argue that. I think it's some kind of receiver. And of course we've been seeing lights in the sky, and they've been drawn and talked about for an incredibly long time. In previous videos I showed that I thought churches were communicating with other realms. And I said for that you would need nuclear power. You would need a lot of power. So let me just show you something else. I just wanted to mention this. Again, this is something that Sandy sent to me. And it's really just trying to reinforce the idea that, you know, you've got the churches which you imagine were probably 1300s, 1400s, maybe 1200s. And then you've got the more ancient buildings of the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians. I think these are all just different timelines, different beings that have been here at different eras. And so they use their own language and they use their own ways of communicating. But they were all doing the same thing, and the same thing is being done now, and it's just that we are completely oblivious to it. We're just ignored, and we're used in ways that we don't understand. But anyway, this is, and there are other articles, and I think there's a few videos on it as well. Why did the ancient Greeks build their cities in earthquake zones? Well, for several good reasons. And they say that they lie on massive fault zones. Again, I've already argued that. What they were doing there is the fact that the fault lines create cliffs, and that's saying that, so they were defences. I don't even know that the cliffs were there. The cliffs may well be a part of the building. I haven't looked. But the Greeks built baths and temples at the hot springs. And that's really the point I want you to make. If you look into it, you will find that all of these Greek temples were built at hot springs. And they were built at hot springs because, just like the churches, you find the hot spring. That's where you're going to put down your well. That's how you're going to get your electricity. You build the building around it. That's the central point. The temple is the central point of the city, in the same way that a church is the central point because of what it can provide. It's a picked area, and it's always chosen because that is where the hot springs are, the geysers are, so you know you can get your thermal energy from there. And some of the gases emitted could induce human trances, it said. Well, the famous Temple of Apollo at Delphi, there are traces of ethylene, even now. There are traces of ethylene, which produce a state of euphoria. Now, I'm going to quickly just go off track, because ethylene, these cotton buds, or, you know, these testing kits that are sterilised with ethylene oxide, you've probably heard about that. And you probably heard as well, and not only heard, it is a fact that ethylene oxide does have tendencies to cause cancer. So that's not a myth, that is a fact, and you can look that up, and it's not a myth that they use ethylene oxide to sterilise the buds. And they've been using ethylene oxide, so it says, for quite a long time for sterilising materials in hospitals, and it's never caused a problem before. And it's never caused a problem before because they haven't been putting it up people's noses and down the back of their throat repetitively. So I don't know what damage that may cause. But what I wanted to say is there's something else about ethylene oxide. It's used on fruit, and it's a gas, and when it's used in a very small amount. Again, we said it wouldn't be enough to cause cancer, and it's been used since the 80s. And it may even be the reason why there is more cancer now. I don't know. I wouldn't like to say one way or another. But the point is that it ripens the fruit quicker. So it enables producers to get an unripe fruit, like banana or so on, ship it unripened, and they can store it unripened for longer, and then when they want a whole batch of it to ripen it quickly, they spray it with the ethylene oxide. Now the way that works, and you can look this up for yourself, but the way that it works is it breaks down the cell walls. And I find it interesting that they want children, secondary school children, to keep putting it up their noses. And it started with secondary school children. Of course, it's now developed into everyone. But it made me wonder whether the idea is to produce a nasal spray because so many people are rejecting the vaccine. And what they would need to do is break down the cell walls in order that when the nasal spray is inhaled, it will go straight to the brain. So it's just a point I wanted to mention because I think that is a more likely scenario than they actually want to give people cancer. But the ethylene oxide is not by accident. But on we go. So uranium is the main ingredient of nuclear power, and going along the lines of what I've already said, I think that's urine. The name, the colour, the fact that they both glow under UV light gives it away for me. That's what I think uranium primarily is. Nuclear power is not developed for the purpose of providing electricity. That's just a sideline product. Nuclear power is, as far as I'm concerned, about accessing other timelines. And before I begin to show you how, let me show you what leads me to believe that nuclear power was available prior to the 1800s. So in Gabon, Africa, there are 17 natural nuclear fission reactors. Now scientists say the Gabon nuclear reactors are remarkable because they spontaneously began operating about 2 billion years ago. So in the whole world, uranium-238 is the dominant isotope. So if you're mining uranium, you're probably mining uranium-238. It's 99.275% of it. And uranium-234 is present in just trace amounts. Natural resources of uranium-235 comprises of 0.720%, and it's only found at Gabon in these natural nuclear fission reactors. Uranium-235 is the main ingredient in nuclear fission. Fusion is to fuse together. Fission, and this is the 1819 definition, is division of a cell or organism, and it's from the Latin fissionum. So what we're talking about is fertilization, and that is genuinely what they're doing. This is cell division. This is how things grow. Now, I've already shown my reasons for believing rock is organic originally. When they tell you they're splitting atoms, they mean they are dividing the cell. They're not cutting the atom in half. Again, it's a little trick. So many people realized, or truthers I should say, not people, so many truthers realized some time back that they couldn't possibly be splitting an atom. They're not. And I can show you that. They are not. I won't show it to you today, but I'll go through that another time. They really are doing this. And the thing that nuclear fission gives birth to is plutonium. But that's the process that takes place. You're probably aware that all the planets are linked with metals, which are linked with gods and goddesses from ancient Greece and Rome. So Mars is iron, Jupiter tin, Saturn lead, Uranus uranium, Venus copper, Neptune, not water, is a radioactive acinicide metal, Neptunium. Mercury is mercury, Ceres is selenium, and that again is another metal, Pluto, plutonium. The moon and sun are of course gold and silver, and the alchemical glyphs for the metal and associated planet are the same. And that needs looking into because there's a link there that I haven't quite made yet, but maybe somebody else can. Uranium is found in rock. The measurement of the isotope indicates how stable it is. That's what the difference is, and what they want to do is make it unstable. Uranium will eventually, left to its own devices, decay into lead, and decay is obviously different to fission. Uranium conversion. So after mining, the ore is crushed in a mill where water is added to produce a slurry of fine ore, particles and other materials. The slurry is leached with sulfuric acid or alkaline solution to dissolve the uranium, leaving the remaining rock and other minerals undissolved. The uranium is then separated, filtered and dried to produce uranium oxide concentrate, and the next process is enrichment. Please bear in mind this all had to happen naturally. So fission just happened at 17 different locations in Africa. So not one, but 17 locations nearby to each other. This is the enrichment process, and it requires the uranium to be in a gaseous form. And this is achieved through a process called conversion, where the uranium oxide is converted into a different compound, uranium hexafluoride, which is a gas at relatively low temperatures. The uranium hexafluoride is fed into centrifuges with thousands of rapidly spinning vertical tubes that separate uranium-235 from the slightly heavier uranium-238 isotope. Centrifuges separate the uranium into two streams. One stream is enriched in uranium-235, the other consists of tails containing a lower concentration of uranium-235, which is known as depleted uranium. Now, if someone can show me a place in the world where the ingredients all came together and spontaneously baked cakes perfectly, then I'll come back and revise the possibility of man having no hand in these natural reactors. But until then, for me, this is evidence of historic use of nuclear power. Also in Gabon is Cirque Rouge, Red Circus, and it's said to be a natural formation. So take a good look. That look natural to you? Because to me, it looks like a town that's been ravaged by heat. And this looks like a sort of window. These look like walls. And you've got that looks a bit like a doorway there. There aren't many photos of it. I don't think many people have been there because of its location. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it's probably very radioactive. Not that radiation to certain degrees is harmful to you, but yeah, too much isn't great. Yellow cake. This is the common term for crude uranium-235, and refrigerated milk is the usual form of enriched uranium-235, basic ingredients for a nuclear reaction. So are you beginning to see why it's not just about creating electricity? A water wheel can do that. Egypt. William Gleason, before the delusion. Now, William Gleason is a former biotech consultant and a lifetime skeptic. He's got a degree in biotechnology. I hope he's got nothing whatsoever to do with what's being injected into people now. But anyway, William Gleason is convinced that the pyramids were power plants. His research and evidence are very compelling, and if you haven't read this book, or excerpts of it at least, do. And I'm going to pick just one of the many points that he makes, because not only do I absolutely agree, but I think I can add weight to his theory. Egyptian funerary rituals for the bodies of dead pharaohs. So to enable the dead body to transform into an ark, a glorified being of light within the pyramid, a last meal is prepared. Now, the nature of the dead body was described both in texts and illustrated in temple paintings, and it wasn't a human body, but rather a stone coffer filled with tablets of lapis lazuli, which is, of course, a small or large, depending on where you got it from, but tablets of it are, it implies small. It looks like lots of little small balls of blue stone. It's said that Thoth, the god of writing, magic, language, said to have been born from a seed of Horus. Now, I think Horus is another word for hours, time, and filled the chest with the eye of Horus, which was made of real lapis lazuli. So what I want to look into is what I think that lapis lazuli may have been. Now it goes on Korah. This bit comes from, about food spells of the Egyptians, and it records the sustenance generically as food and drink, these food spells, and it's interpreted most often as cakes and ale, but it's also been referred to as bread, beer, wine, water, or milk. And curiously though, the texts also specified that the sustenance was characterized in units of 2, 3, 5. O you who are in charge of food, may you give to the king 2 loaves, 3 loaves, and 5 loaves. And I think that's relating to uranium-235. The food symbol was a bread loaf or muffin shaped, usually interpreted as cakes. Osiris, the god of fertility and the underworld, fission, as I said, it's fertility of dead stuff, so Osiris, the god of fertility and the underworld, fission, it relates to what I'm saying, is he whom have been given cakes of saffron. Saffron cakes have been brought unto him. The cakes of saffron are the eyes of Horus. Of course, saffron is yellow. God of the sun and the moon, hours, time, Horus. So, pyramid, pyro. It comes from the Greek word pyre, meaning fire, middle. So, today we refer to the middle as the core, and it's the heat and the core, pyramid. The drink symbol was the universal waves sign denoting liquid. The pyramid texts speak of the magic efflux which issued from cold water. It was not mere water, but rather sacred milk of eternal life from the town of the milk goddess. You shall give me a jug of milk. You are pure by means of the milk. I have restored, enriched, the milk to its proper level. The dead body was fed with saffron, yellow cake, called liquid milk in units of 235, which provided radiance in its eye. Heat. A nuclear reactor core is where the heat's generated, obviously, and typically the fuel will be enriched uranium contained in thousands of individual fuel pins. So my question is, were the fuel pins made of lapis, or is something else going on? Because what they do with the rods, once you've got these fuel pins, they're put into rods, usually of graphite initially, just to hold them all together. So when you see a bundle of rods, you're looking at the external part, which is quite often graphite. A spent nuclear fuel rod in a cooling pond glows bright blue. Once the rods are used up, they get hot and radioactive, and water-filled pools are sometimes used to cool and store fuel rods. And incidentally, that is when CERN become interested. CERN want it when it's blue. CERN want the nuclear waste. And that is why nuclear waste is made. The name CERN is derived from the acronym for the French Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, which is really crap French, or European Council for Nuclear Research. It's what they do. How could they possibly do their job if they haven't got any nuclear material to research? They want the nuclear waste. Lapis is fluorescent blue in UV light. One of the earliest English language translations of the Book of the Dead by Birch, 1860s. The god in his box, shining in the crystal, was light at its birth, from the sun in its transformations. Its waves poured out of the lapis lazuli, its water of fire, a foul flux emanating from Osiris. And I think you'll find that Osiris is actually Sirius, but more on that another day. The lapis lazuli pellets referred to in the Book of the Dead were either mistaken to be lapis, when in reality it was spent uranium pellets, or lapis was the word used for spent uranium. So CERN has links with Egypt and time. So you've got these three beetles, which have, obviously what we're looking at here is the opening of the tunnel for related to CERN. A lot of the CERN employees were involved in putting this play together. Some of the scientists from CERN played some of the main roles in this play that was put together. And lots of politicians went to watch it. Angela Merkel being one of them. And it was to do with breaking through a particular tunnel. It's a train line that runs and takes employees to and from the CERN facility. So that's what its links are with CERN. And you've got these 3 beetles, which are very much Egyptian. Of course, that's the Egyptian one. You've got the sun at the top, which is the heat, and the wings of time. And you'll notice these 3 lines. And I think those 3 lines are relating to the Trinity. I think that's what they're representing. And the Trinity being the electrical charge, because it's like a sort of electrolysis that's going on with the spent uranium. And you've got the uranium and the energy and the matter together are what produce the plutonium. In India, you've got a Shivalinga. It's a representation of the goddess Shiva. And Shiva is known as the destroyer within the Hindu Trinity. It includes Brahma and Vishnu. And again, on a Shivalinga, you've got these 3 lines, and that central dot, which is the sun, the point of heat, the core, and Shiva. The first place that a nuclear bomb was detonated, Trinity site, and there's an obelisk there to commemorate it. And again, our sign for nuclear, 1, 2, 3, and the central dot, the core, and the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Tradition linked with Shiva. So the traditional lingam rituals in major Shiva temples, and the reason I'm sort of laughing to myself now is because I know what's coming next. The traditional lingam rituals in major Shiva temples includes offerings of flowers, grass, dried rice, fruits, leaves, water, and a milk bath. The water of Shiva is poison. I'm thinking Shiva, vibration. Irradiated water from spent fuel rods is not the same as thermal water from the ground. Thermal water is fine to swim in. It relieves aches and pains. And of course people go to natural thermal waters. And I pointed out one that exists that's been man-made in Iceland. And that was in the previous video. Those thermal waters are radioactive waters. They're fine. They're not harmful. But irradiated water from spent fuel rods is not the same. That is not healthy. It's not good for you. And it's said that when Lord Shiva drank the poison produced at the time of creation, he started, the creation, they're birthing something, he started to get overly hot. So Mother Ganga showered her waters, urine, on his head, and the demigods all offered water from the sacred rivers to cool him. And this is what you have to do. Once that uranium is spent, you need to keep it cool. You don't want it going critical. Shivalinga, and this is what I was laughing at. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that word, but it's a temple in India. This is a Shivalinga. These people worship this. It's ancient, and it's a Shivalinga, the destroyer. This is an abandoned nuclear plant in Kursk, Russia. Seeing a similarity there? This is a rusting nuclear reactor core at abandoned Phipps Bend station in Tennessee. And I've just put that picture in again just so you can compare the two, the Shivalinga in India. This is another Shivalinga in Hampi in India. Notice all the water? Because the ritual is that they have to keep putting water over it. They have to bathe the Shivalinga. They have to keep it cool. Huh? What do they think is actually going on? So the cosmic pillar. The origin of the lingam, known as Shivalinga, is known as a beginningless and endless cosmic pillar. Ling comes from Latin, where it has the meaning tongue. This meaning is found in such words as bilingual, language, lingo, linguini, linguistics, monolingual. It's sound, vibration. Cosmic pillar at Shiva temple, this one, and chimney at nuclear power plant. Shiva, Shiva, dance of destruction, speed. CERN, neutrinos beat speed of light time record, and that was posted on October the 13th, 2011, Young Scientist Journal. They have the Shiva, and they are looking for speed. And nuclear power comes in many sizes. And I'll say it again, a water wheel can generate electricity. This is not about electricity. Oh, they have so done a number on us, haven't they? They really have. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So, obviously, this is your Shivalinga size compared to a car. And obviously, you've got really massive ones. But this one's handheld. This is to do with medicines and X-ray machines and so on. And I do wonder whether these fasces are fuel rods. They look very similar. So let's see if we can investigate that a little bit further. Now, because we don't tend to carry the rods around, you don't see the transport packaging in pictures. But this is a waveguide clamp to make sure the pellets in the rods don't bounce around. So just to be clear, these are the rods that the pellets are all lined up in. And this is the packaging. So this is the clamp, and you can see how that sort of sticks out there. And this is the clamp actuator and the waveguide. And I won't, this is obviously the fuel rod bit. Now this looks like an actuator, and this looks like the clamp. Again, this is another one. Actuator, clamp. They're not axes. The word fasces and fascinum. Now, Google will tell you fasces means bundle. And I'm telling you, words do not describe things, they describe their purpose. So when Google wants to tell you this is the thing that it's describing, you need to keep on looking. Fascinate comes from the Latin word for evil spell, and originally meant bewitched or spellbound in the literal, more sinister sense. And that is exactly what we have all been, spellbound. And it doesn't mean bound, it means spellbound. Latin fascinatus, enchant, bewitch, fascinate from fascinum, and that's a phallus-shaped amulet worn around the neck used in ancient Rome for witchcraft. Fission, fasces, the craft of birthing dead cells, the phallus of Satan, lead, the final state of uranium. This is a phallus inscribed at Pompeii. I just thought I would show you these cooling towers because they can be quite artistic. Yeah, the artwork's quite nice on there. Doesn't always have to look ugly. They've made it look ugly because then we will not associate it with the more beautiful buildings and structures that we see. So Pompeii, this is Pompeii, and this is construction of a containment unit for nuclear power. But what does nuclear power have to do with time and dimensions? Now, almost all science fiction films relating to time and dimensional travel involve radiation, or quantum science, or both. And I never really took much notice of that, but I've noticed that now, that it's all there, it's telling you. 01. In my last video, I said that computer code is a series of 01s, which is the same as on-off. I compared it to the way we speak by leaving pauses between words, syllables and sentences, and humans are the only species to use such complex sounds and tones to communicate. Light behaves in that way too. You're looking at a sort of side view. The light is on, then it pauses. And it's the backflow of light that creates the dip. Then the light pulses again. It's on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And at different rates. And we're very sensitive to those rates. We clearly are supposed to understand that, or we wouldn't have been given sight that identifies so clearly the different levels of light waves. And you can't see the flicker of light because it's too fast, but nevertheless it is there. In the same way, if you watch a film, you're aware that you're watching a lot of still pictures, but when they're run together, you don't see the flicker. And this is how heat moves. It's pulsing. Heat, of course, is the same thing as light. It's just pulsing at a tone that we detect with our skin instead of our eyes. So you can think of it as, going back to the colours, you can have your range of 7 colours, and they can be really bright, really dull, they can be, really sort of faded out, really deep. There's different levels, and the level that this pulses at, we perceive as heat. We call it heat. That doesn't mean every species is calling it heat. Heat isn't a thing. It's a particular resonance that we identify as heat. And that means that heat and cold, the fact that we can identify them by touch and by it touching us. If a room is cold, we can sense it. If it's warm, we can sense it. There's a reason for that. We were given these senses for a reason. And this is the pattern of water if a pebble is dropped in it. So although you can't see it, the air is making the same pattern. When the pebble fell, it made a hole in the air, allowing that drop of water, this ball of water, to be sucked up to fill the void. Now the air's going to collapse around it, compressing it back down, and then a smaller, less energetic hole will open up again, pulling up another smaller drop of water until the energy is dissipated. It's on, off, on, off. So manipulating sound can transform our experience of food and drink, making stale potato chips taste fresh, adding the sensation of cream to what is actually black coffee, or boosting the savoury peaty notes in whiskey, and this is according to psychologist Charles Spence. Taste and smell are related to the vibration of food, or the scent is related as well to vibrations. Your tongue has different sized receptors, and they tune in to the vibration of the food, allowing you to distinguish between the tastes. Of course, all of your senses are informing your brain of something. So food and scent pulse on off like everything else, and that includes your heartbeat, on off, and the ocean with its 2 tidal turns a day. The 0-1 of information, or OA, O being the 0, A being the first letter of the alphabet, it's another way of expressing 0-1, obsidianalis, is in our language. So we say things like, oh, you know, I'll get you up to speed, or not on my wavelength, or gives a bad vibe. It's all vibrational and resonance. Again, interacting words. Now, X-rays, they cannot be experienced as heat. And not by us. We don't experience X-rays as heat. In the same way that heat cannot be experienced as sound. In the same way that sound cannot be experienced as light. So describing alpha, beta, X-rays, gamma rays in terms of heat or light is wrong, because that's not how we perceive them. It needs to be described in terms of speed through space, and that is another way of saying time. Time and distance. Do you recall your teacher telling you that if you were on a planet far enough away, with a telescope big enough, you could look back at Earth and see dinosaurs? Do you recall being told that many of the stars you can see are not there anymore? They burnt out long ago, and you're still seeing the light that used to be there. It sounds so silly that you've probably dismissed it, and even your teacher who told you probably didn't really comprehend it. Well, like everything else, they weren't lying to you. They were just telling you to imagine it in a way that you couldn't make any sense of it. So do you recall being told that if the sun exploded, you wouldn't know it for 8.3 minutes, because now, from the sun's perspective, happened 8.3 minutes ago? When I was younger, I thought I was too stupid to really get it, so I ignored it. And later I thought it was just another hoax, it's a lie, it's a deceit. But let me show you a better way to comprehend what's happening. So from your perspective, standing by the side of a motorway, cars are zooming by. From a distance, you see slower movement, because you can see the wider picture, and the cars aren't going any faster, and you know that, but your brain adapts to that. But they look slower. And it's the same with the plane. I've sat on the beach sometimes and seen the plane high up, and I thought, is that actually moving? And of course, it's, you know, I'm watching it for a while, and yeah, it is, but incredibly slowly from my perspective. And the moon hardly seems to move at all from a distance, but ask anyone who's filmed it close up how fast it shifts across the screen. Because I've done it myself. You focus in on the moon, and you have to keep on adjusting for the moon's movement. It goes quicker than you think if you haven't done it before. It's a bit of a surprise. Now, this is a bit of a discomfort for scientists. So, let's say you're in England and you speak to someone on FaceTime in Australia, and you show an image of the moon in your blue sky, and he shows you an image of the moon identical to yours but upside down, and it's in a black sky. Now that poses a dilemma. How is it showing at the same time, for one? And two, how is it in both a night sky and a daylit sky? And three, why is it upside down? Now I know you probably want to jump all over me and say perhaps, oh, that's because we're on a globe and people are standing upside down underneath us. But it doesn't matter what model you apply to this, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because of the horizon levels. And I know it's a discomfort for scientists because I was present when a physicist was asked this question. And they kind of scrunched up their face like they were thinking, huh? Like it never dawned on them before. And they didn't want to say, that's not possible, because the guy was claiming, I have footage of this. And they were saying, well, I suppose maybe it's possible, maybe there's a few days of a year if things were at the right angle, they were struggling with it. And one of the reasons that it feels uncomfortable even to picture it is because it puts you in a position where you do have to literally put that image of your head of a ball with a man standing on top of it and a man standing underneath it, and you have to picture where the moon would be that both of them would be looking at the same time. And it feels uncomfortable to actually think about a ball with someone standing upside down, because that doesn't really sit well with anyone, does it? So I'm going to run this by you, and you may think, no, that's way off the mark, that can't be right, but just bear with me. So let me put that scenario to you in another way. So I tell you, I've been to Scotland, and I took footage of the moon on the 12th of July at 7:30 p.m. And the moon was in the blue sky, because in July at 7:30 is still daytime. And then I went to Australia on the 13th of July, and at 4:30 in the morning, I took more footage of the moon in the night sky. Then I played both bits of footage together, and I couldn't work out how I was seeing the moon twice. Would the logical explanation be that I'd taken the footage from two different moments in time? As Einstein mockingly told you, space-time is bound up together. Space is time. Time is space. And it is tough to get your head around it, because it's not how we've been taught to think of time. And I will go through it in a different video more slowly, and we'll see if we can find us some answers to those tricky questions like, what is the shape of the Earth, and what does the vibration of cold really tell us? What is ice in relation to time? But for now, you will no doubt have heard that if you're a certain distance away from Big Ben, when it chimes, you can hear the chime on the radio before you hear it in real time. And that's because the waves are being pulsed. Even though it's got to go further, the waves are being pulsed quicker. So it receives you receive that sound on the radio before you receive it through the atmosphere. The looking glass. If you could float a mirror or reflective material as high up as you can, could you use the image to see the past? To get something high up, you'd use helium and hydrogen mix, and you put it in a titanium ball of some kind so it didn't get pulled apart. You'll be aware that if you go up a mountain, you're likely to swell, you'll get an edema, and you'll struggle to breathe. There isn't less air, it's just that the air is expanded, and the threat posed to planes is being pulled apart if they go too high. And the reverse is true. When you go down to the depth of the ocean, there you are under threat of external pressure and crushing it. So you'll understand, if you think about that, what shape that's describing. sort of inverted pyramid. You're getting crushed at the bottom and expanded at the top. And that's the same with whatever it is that comes down through that atmosphere. What's burning up is the thing that's being ripped apart, not that it's being condensed. And I'm not suggesting the Earth is a pyramid. It's just certainly something to think about, because it is also the ideal shape for holograms. Artificial suns. Now, there seems to be a lot of manufacture of artificial suns. There was a lot about it in China. This particular one is in Germany, and I like to question everything, so I'm curious about why they're wanting to build artificial suns. And at the centre of each of these pods, it reaches over 3,000 degrees Celsius. Now, a GoPro balloon is only going to go so high and before it expands and explodes. And I'm sure anyone that's looked at GoPro footage will realise that that's exactly what happens. It just expands and expands, and then it pops and it won't go any higher. So will extreme heat take mirrors up higher if that's what they're wanting to take up there? And here we are again, back at those observatories, because you'd need a way of collecting the images or the data through a powerful telescope. Now, this image was taken from a spy satellite in the 50s, and it might not seem much of an advantage to be able to view the past. But if you can send information faster than the speed of our real time, and can you see how a split mirror could be used to bounce information from now to back then? And people can make different decisions, and history can be altered. And the tachyonic anti-telephone is a hypothetical device in theoretical physics presented by Albert Einstein and Arnold Sommerfeld, which could be used to send signals into one's own past. CERN began on 29th of September 1954. If in the 1950s scientists built a receiver, messages could be sent directly from this time to that time. First spy satellite, and you're going to love this, it was called the Corona satellite, and it was the Corona project, Cold War spy program. Corona is like a time machine for us, said Jason of Harvard University. Archaeologists are using the incredible photographs from this Cold War era spy satellite to unlock secrets of world history. Launched on 28th of February 1959, just 4 years after CERN was set up. It was the first man-made object put into a polar orbit, but only sporadically returned telemetry. If CERN are able to send messages back to the 1950s, then at least one version of our future must be in touch with us now. And I suspect that CERN do not like the look of the future, because the tech companies seem very keen to alter it, don't they? Spires, alters and transepts. Communication with other timelines is nothing new as far as I'm concerned. It's what led to such a mess of our history, and it's what led to the destruction of the old world. The natural parameters of our time are between the fastest flicker of the sun to the slowest beat of the tides. If you push too many boundaries, alter the vibrations too far, reality snaps. The pole reverses. Hot becomes cold. Oceans become dry. And in Africa, used to have lakes and oceans, and wasn't Antarctica once tropical? And if you have a look at this, and this is Antonio Subarat's design of a flat Earth, I'm not saying that this is the one, I'm just using it as an example, because you can see there that you have this green band, and you have a dry band, and then you have a green band, and then it dries out again. On, off, resonance. And if those poles reverse, you know that you can expect where there's a dip, there's going to be a wave. It alternates. CERN. Excerpt from the Young Scientist article. So, physicists using the Large Hadron Collider at CERN smashed heavy lead ions together at close to the speed of light. They generated temperatures of more than 1.6 trillion degrees Celsius, 100,000 times hotter than the center of the sun on 14th of June 2011. See, this isn't heat. It's beyond our experience of heat. It's time. The hurrier I go, the behinder I get. Lewis Carroll was telling us something. As Einstein is credited with proposing, the faster you move, the slower time becomes. Fast enough, and you'll move backwards. When we look back and see that this was always their plan, we can see that there's loads of evidence. So many truthers have done a fantastic job of showing how much evidence is that this was always planned, and we wonder at their patience and their diligence. Doesn't it make far more sense that messages from the future have been dictating alterations to the past? When we look back at photos and images of buildings that were destroyed, then undestroyed, then redesigned and built again, doesn't it make you wonder how, if the realm is as we're told, any of this is possible? Unless, of course, time can be altered. And this is one of my favourite things of Alice in Wonderland. But I don't want to go among the mad people. But you can change that for conspiracy theorists, said Alice. Oh, but you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad. How do you know I'm mad? Asked Alice. You must be, said the cat. Well, you wouldn't have come. Now, of course, if you get a divergence of timelines, I suppose the inevitable thing would be that there'd be all these odd differences that you couldn't quite pinpoint. And I am one of those people that thinks the Monopoly man had a monocle, but he doesn't. Alice is a very suspicious acronym, don't you think, for the Hadron Collider at CERN? Do you not think Alice? Why call it Alice? So, it stands for a Large Ion Collider Experiment. And it's one of the 4 main experiments at the Large Hadron Collider, with the increase in instantaneous luminosity. Alice detector will boost its readout rate. And this is the way that they word things so that you can't really grasp what they're saying. But luckily for me, I don't have many talents, but reading complex words is one of them. And I will go through it at a later stage. And maybe I'm wrong about all this, and maybe I've got some of it right and some of it wrong, and I'll never know the difference. But what I do know, what my senses tell me, is that fear is our enemy. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft. Fear and all of its associates are vibrations. But we are an orchestra of organs. Our senses are a delicate lace of electrical receptors, and vibration alters mood, it prompts emotions, and in turn it impacts thoughts and ultimately action. And a good example of how simple it is to influence and be influenced with just words or images is Yod. Your energy is free. Your energy is free. It's a beating heart and a pulsing brain, and they can't charge you for it yet. And if we bring ourselves in tune, in harmony with each other, we can be the music that others stop to hear. Let's aim to make our vibrations so strong that even in silence it sings like a tuning fork that brings others in line with us. The time is coming. Be ready to shine. Thank you for watching.